Hello everybody, welcome to my astrology report for the full moon in Libra, which will be happening on Friday, April 19th at around 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I'm super excited to be doing a report with you all today about some of the different things that are going on here. So, as always, if this stuff is interesting to you, definitely please reach out if you'd like to have your own birth chart read so you can understand like what areas of your life this activity might be impacting the most. And yeah, I've been doing these video reports on the new moons and the full moons because I feel as though they're kind of like an anchor point to give us a bit of a grounding. And though I am talking about the full moon, I also am sort of talking about just the energy of this time and different kinds of themes of things that are going on right now. So one of the major parts of the video today will be about this Aries Libra, Sun in Aries, Moon in Libra, full moon that will be happening at 29 degrees of Libra. And we'll be talking about that. I'm also going to talk about Mercury, which is making moves, finally out of Pisces. And I'm also going to talk a little bit about the Saturn-Pluto conjunction, opposition to the north node of the moon, conjunction with the south node of the moon, and sort of what that entails, as well as sort of talking about some other technical details. But my hope is that out of some of to be light on the technical and hopefully just sort of share the extractions that I have sort of deduced from all of this. So this full moon is really quite potent, intense. It is our second Libra full moon of this cycle, and typically that doesn't happen super often. We usually have, a full moon in a sign a month, and then it shifts on. Our first full moon was at 0 degrees of Libra, and now we're at 29 degrees of Libra. So this full moon is sort of like closing this chapter of this Aries-Libra axis and the tension that has sort of been a primary theme of this time. So we started off the month or this cycle. Usually we look at the new moons as sort of like the beginning of the cycle, whereas in this case, since we are sort of like, it was sort of like its whole own chapter with the Libra full moon, Aries full new moon, and then the Libra full moon again. So much around relationships, interpersonal dynamics, trying to find the balance between like what are my needs, my desires, what is my path. Am I in alignment with my truth? And compromise, collaboration. How do we all kind of fit together like puzzle pieces to make it work? And that's kind of where the Libra element comes in. And so when we had this first full moon at the beginning of the month, we were in the midst of just some funky stuff. So we'd had that Mercury retrograde that happened in Pisces, and that has had lingering effects until really just about 2 days ago when it moved out of what's called its shadow phase. So when a planet goes retrograde, if it stations retrograde, it goes back however many degrees, then it comes forward. Even when it starts to move forward, it's still moving through what's called the shadow phase of the retrograde. So until it really hits that point where the retrograde started and can start to move forward from there, we're really in a process of sort of like integrating the things we've learned, and we're not really like moving forward per se. And so now that we have Mercury moving into Aries, it's definitely a time where things are crystallizing, clarifying, and we're sort of moving out of this muck. And so in the beginning of this cycle, when we had that Libra full moon, Mercury was definitely still in the depths of Pisces, and we had Venus coming into Pisces, and just this sort of, Venus rules Libra as the planet of relationships, interpersonal dynamics. It's so much about love and beauty and partnership and values. And so in Pisces, it's actually quite strong. It's exalted. It's really lovely. I think, though, because of the Neptunian energy that's been in there, and then the Mercury retrograde, Pisces can really create this sort of sense of like disillusioned, confused, what's up, what's down, what's me, what's you, and sort of this like it can all kind of, and some of the potential ways of coping with that can be just like escaping and totally numbing, totally detaching from reality. And so, yeah, we've been seeing a lot of that over this last cycle as that Mercury retrograde came back and met Neptune in the heart of Pisces. Is like your lines of reason, the plans that you had are not, nothing's happening linearly right now, and things sort of feeling really suspended, feeling really in a limbo. That was kind of like a really major theme of this last few months, with that Neptune being in the heart of Pisces. And then all of these planets in Pisces. And so now that Mercury is finally moving into Aries, we are kind of like, we can feel that sort of, even though the sun's been in Aries this whole month, and there's been this sort of like restless, busy, I gotta get it done, gotta move, gotta go kind of energy, because of all this like lingering Pisces energy, it's been really hard to like really step into and like own that and find, like tap into and work with the medicine of the Aries sun, because the Aries sun is also incredibly strong. But because of that lingering Pisces energy that we'd been having, it was I found personally pretty hard to sort of feel, to take action in any way. And so much, Aries is so much about action. And then throughout this time too, we've had Mars in moving out of Taurus and into Gemini. Mars in Gemini is like, there's 1,000 different options or opportunities or things that I could be doing. It's very kind of dispersed or split, curious, excited, distracted, hard to sort of like focus. Mars ruling Aries, like, so that planet that's usually just like solar plexus, like super direct and straightforward about like what I want to accomplish, I'm ready to accomplish, that cardinal fire energy, that initiative energy. In Gemini, it's sort of like, boo, but there's 18 different options of the fork in the road, possibilities, options. And so, yeah, that mutable energy with the Gemini, Mars in Gemini, Mercury in Pisces has made it really hard to sort of like tap into and really kind of feel out that really guttural, direct, powerful, forceful, accomplishing, driven energy that Aries typically has. So now that we have this Mercury moving into Aries, as I was saying, we're kind of moving into a time where things are probably becoming a lot more clear in terms of relationships, in terms of this limbo period is kind of starting to wrap up a bit, or at least we're a lot clearer at this point, hopefully, if we've spent time being in the discomfort of that uncertainty and really kind of fishing around for like what are the things that drive me? What is my truth? The way that my truth is going to happen, I maybe don't know, or I can't plan or can't foresee, and perhaps the vehicles that I thought were going to bring me to where I wanted to go are not the vehicles, but is the direction the same? And so this can be a time of changing course, sort of re-evaluating. Yeah, and then with the Jupiter going retrograde in Sagittarius, the sign that it rules, it's sort of like, okay, maybe we're going to like re-point our arrow a little bit. Like, where are we headed? Where are we going to? What are our goals? Where do we want to be moving? Where do we want to be directing like our life force energy? And sort of, just sort of parsing out like what are our burden? What is ours to carry? Like, sort of trying to get clear about setting up clear boundaries around baggage and things that people are working through. I don't know if baggage is really the right word, the most tender and loving word for what we're all kind of bringing to the table, and being, starting to sort of say, actually, like, I know, like, that's not going to work for me. Like, I've tried a bunch of times, and particularly with other people, and it doesn't mean that thing that person is dealing with is wrong, or it's just not gonna work with me. And so this is that time of sort of like getting really clear and getting really direct. So it can be really hard. It can mean the endings of relationships, endings of partnerships, collaborations, or a total kind of like reevaluation of like, how can we make this work? Like, collaborating's really hard, especially compromising's really hard, especially when you have a really clear and direct vision for what you want to do. And so I have been finding that is a lot of what this time has been about. And so now we're at this full moon, this sort of like, and then the other kind of factor at play is this Saturn and Pluto in Capricorn on the south node of the moon. This is this huge kind of pressure around like, be authentic, show up for what is your purpose here? What is your truth in this really kind of like grand way? Like, how are you showing up for yourself? How are you saying like, this is what I want and I'm going to make this happen? And how much of that is tied in with the ego? That can be sort of some of the shadowy elements of Capricorn that south node there is sort of bringing up, is like this attachment to reputation, or this attachment to the things that we're building outside of ourselves. How do we hold those things lightly and loosely so that we can evolve and change and shift course when we need to shift course, and know that the truth is really at the core, and that we're in our integrity as we're doing this. Are we being authentic? Are we in our integrity? Are we accountable to community? Like, these are all kinds of questions, and that Pluto there and south node of the moon is sort of like ripping off the Band-Aid and being like, ooh, like, that's not looking too good under there. That's not looking too honest or true or authentic. And so there's this pressure of like, how are we stepping up right now? And I think a lot of people, what are we doing here in this third dimension, in this lifetime? Where Pisces, all of those there's sort of those bigger questions, those more transcendent kinds of things that had been going on. And now it's like, okay, what is our purpose here while we're on Earth? What are we here to do? What are we here to build? And so, lots of pressure, lots of shifting, and then how does that relate to like my role in this whole thing, that Aries energy, and how am I being fulfilled, and how am I being how am I honoring where my gut, where my drive is taking me? What is really filling me, and who's coming along, like who wants to go? I think we can have a lot of shame around being direct about what we want, and feel guilty for having really kind of like crystallized visions for things. But I think this is a time of like, when we know our truth and we know what we need to do, we gotta do to go there. And so it might be still a bit of time until it took with this Jupiter retrograde now in Sagittarius for a bit, and then Saturn's going to go retrograde. It's sort of like, okay, like 2 steps back, reorienting, restructuring. The vision may have sort of shifted, where the arrow's pointing is kind of shifting a little bit, and we're kind of really tapping in with that like primal, guttural space to prepare us to launch forward. And that's kind of what this Aries, the gift of this Aries energy. And so, on top of all of this, the Sun is conjunct 3 degrees off from Uranus. So we've got the Sun and Uranus over here, across from the Moon and Libra. And something that kind of came to mind here too was this concept of like a bully. Like the Sun and Uranus together kind of feel like, whoa. Like the Moon in Libra is like kind of soft and gentle and vulnerable and exposed and really light, and then the Sun in Aries, and then Uranus is the awakener. It's like the Tower card in tarot, like the destroyer, it brings enlightenment, but it's not comfortable, and it's so much about breaking free from comfort, breaking free from norms, and sort of letting, and in Taurus particularly for the next 7 years, like letting our comfort, letting our safety nets kind of crumble, and really pushing our limits of vulnerability and what safety means to us, so that we can grow and expand and be more free. And so, it also was sort of making me think of like radical freedom. Like, what does it mean when we really are? Though I think often when people are looking at the zodiac and you're looking at opposing signs, there is this perception that they're kind of like opposite ends of a spectrum, or that they're incompatible, or they're at odds with one another, when really they actually hold the medicine for one another. So when we're being our most authentic, true, honest, driven, focused, creative versions of ourselves with that Aries energy, we can all kind of fit together like a puzzle and show up, because there's no resentment, and we're feeling fulfilled, and we're feeling like we've said our piece, we're being honest, we're being straightforward. And so there can be a capacity to then find, even temporarily, relationships are shifting, where we're pointing our arrows, everything is always constantly changing. And I think that's so much of what this Mercury retrograde in Pisces was about, was like, all right, y'all are a little rigid with your plans right now. Like, let's just blanket everyone in this like surreal, trippy kind of time, to really allow the stuff to sort of stir, and sort of whatever's kind of coming up now is these sort of like crystallized nuggets to help us move forward, taking us out of reality for a bit into this sort of more surreal space, to really tap in with the subconscious too. Like, with that watery stuff, like, it's not all, we can't be, when we're saying this is what I want, and we're saying that from a voice that is conditioned from outside pressures and outside, capitalism, white supremacy, and patriarchy, cis heteropatriarchy, around like what we're supposed to be doing, with that Saturn and Pluto Capricorn stuff. It's like, oh, I'm supposed to be going to whatever, this thing to build my career, to consolidate money, consolidate power, out of fear, there's not enough. And this is all, when we're operating from those conditioned things, we are not, we're neglecting and suppressing that really creative voice that comes out of the subconscious. And so I think that's what that Pisces time really kind of stripped everything else away, so that we kind of had to like tap into that weird, funky, uncomfortable, harder to decipher stuff, and find actually a lot more truth there than we can find in third dimension. So I'm going to pull a few cards and kind of see what comes up in terms of guidance for working with this energy. I think there can be a lot of anger that can come up at this time, as we're kind of getting clear of like, whoa, I've been manipulated, or like, whoa, I've been compromising way too much, or like, whoa, this. And so I think with the being sort of gentle, careful with our words, with the Uranus there, it can be harsh. It can be like, my freedom or nothing, without remembering that like we actually have to continue living on with other people, and we can't burn, where are we burning bridges rather than sort of like intentionally closing doors, and I'm thinking about that as well. Okay. Okay, these are fun. So, Six of Pentacles is a lot around yeah, sort of, I mean, you can see here she's sort of a pentacle suit being so much around sort of like money and abundance in the material realm, and the 6 is sort of this moment of like, okay, feeling at least a little bit more like in control, feeling sort of having a little bit of a bird's eye view. This is a Virgo-y kind of card, having a bird's eye view on where things are at, starting to sort of like see like, okay, what do we have to work with? What are the materials that we have to work with? And we have stuff, we have what we need. Maybe we have more than enough. And so this can maybe be a little bit around that sort of like scarcity model, but it is sort of like this pause before this calm, this pause, this preparation. And then 3 of Wands, expansion, creative expansion, like growing beyond what we, you know, with the Jupiter retrograde in Sagittarius, like expanding beyond what we ever thought we could be, you know, really getting big. And then in this deck they do, instead of the Maiden, the Mother, and the Crone, they do the Child, the Daughter, and the Mother. And so yeah, this card's actually in this particular deck associated with the sign of Aries. Like, go get it! Like, so fierce, so ready to totally step into power. And this one's more sort of like, okay, yeah, adjusting a little, expanding, reorienting, maybe not this person or this thing, but sort of just like doing what we need to do to kind of get our things in order. And we have enough. There is enough to go around, and this is sort of that potentially a little more like conservative tendency might come up in this way. But I think if we could sort of use it as more of like taking stock, taking inventory, looking at what we have, and realizing that we have already accomplished so much, it can sort of prepare us for this, when we're feeling safe, when we're feeling accomplished, and we have enough, and things are in abundance, we can really kind of like let loose a bit and really move forward with some powerful, potent, kind of driven, self-directed, I am, Aries, I am, in the solar plexus. Like, woo, super cool. I'm really feeling excited about all of this, and yeah, so please reach out if you are interested in learning more about your own chart. If you want a tarot reading, I do them remotely and also here in Burlington, Vermont. And yeah, we'll leave it at that. Thank you all so much for joining, and I hope things are crystallizing, perhaps getting more clear, and you're on your path. You are already where you want to go. You're doing it, and I'll see you soon.